The year is 1996. Topps decides to, I guess, dabble in the art of adaptations for comics. Let's skip to a year before that. I hope my dates are right. GoldenEye comes out in theaters. So then the next year, they bring out GoldenEye in comic book form. The next year, they do a video game. If Topps waited 1 year, could they have had a success? Find out now on A Kind of Garbage Podcast Comic Edition. James Bond 007 GoldenEye, issue 1 of 3.
the full title, Topps presents.
So this is the comic we're talking about today. I picked it because I love adaptation comics. I think they're funny. This book has... The art is fine in it. It does, I guess, the first third of the movie. And if you try...
It does an amazing job of the opening action beat of GoldenEye. And then it does the setup in Monte Carlo. And then I'm assuming, who is it? Don McGregor, who wrote it. I'm assuming he looked at how many pages this was going to take and then just went, oh shit. And he just double timed the second half of this comic.
It's expedited so much, which is it's great. You know what I'm most disappointed about this comic book is?
What's that?
That there is no issue 2 or 3.
Is there not?
No.
Oh, no.
Issue 1 came out, and there was never any press release or reason why issue 2 never came out.
Okay. I would assume poor sales.
I would assume that it came out a year after the movie, and then...
Yeah, you didn't really have the tie-in. The movie kind of lost its thunder.
Yeah.
And then you couldn't really, catch on the fan base of the Nintendo 64 game. Because
that was the year after. If they delayed this comic book for 1 year and then released it at the height of GoldenEye, the video game, you could have got some sales. But I assume that nobody bought it because it was a movie that was out of their mind at that point.
Yeah.
So all the actors obviously didn't give their likenesses, but they kind of look like them, just like there's a hint there.
The more the actor is... Sorry, the less likely the actor is to sue over the likeness, the more they look like. Sean Bean looks like Sean Bean, and then whoever the hell the Russian colonel is, it just looks exactly like that actor.
Are you saying that looks like Sean Bean?
I see Sean Bean. So this is... I fell for the honeypot that you love for movie adaptation comics, which is the cover of this comic is done by Brian Stelfreeze, and it is fantastic. James Bond, it looks like Pierce Brosnan. You have it looks like an old school movie poster. It's great. It's really nice and clean looking. It definitely portrays a lot of the action beats from the movie with the satellite and Famke Janssen's character Xenia Onatopp. And the car chase, and then you open it up and it immediately goes to not bad, but the likenesses are gone. Actually, you know what? The interior art is good. It's just kind of, the cover does draw you in. Like
we were saying, it's very expedited to the point where James, it starts with him, that little opening where he shoots the gun, right? He's supposed to be looking through the gun barrel. And then it's immediately him jumping off the dam, and then 2 pages of him jumping off the dam, landing inside the washer and punching the guy. And then on the exact same page, he meets up with Sean Bean's 006.
Yeah.
And then they're automatically already in the facility where they're putting the bombs on the big containers.
But I didn't mind it. Considering that it is the opening beat of the movie, it does take a minute to kind of show, because the movie's so proud of that stunt of him bungee jumping on the dam. It actually takes a minute to be hey, remember the dam scene?
Yeah, this looks like David Hasselhoff, not like Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, you're right. It's the likenesses get a little wonky.
That looks like Sean Bean.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, there's some,
I think it's
good art.
Yeah, the less likely you are to sue, the more it's going to look like you.
Yeah.
So they're inside the facility. It does a good job of explaining that the guards can't shoot inside the facility because it's a secret plant for manufacturing nerve gas, and they're going to blow it up. It's all the beats from GoldenEye, and they're paced out well enough that you actually have a minute or two to savor the visuals, which I really liked. We'll talk about it later, but this is one of the only moments where this happens, because eventually the book just goes like, this is the action beat at the beginning of the movie, and it's taking its time showing you what all the characters are doing, and then later on in the movie, or in the comic, it rushes like high speed through non-action beats. So it's got all the moments like it's got in the first couple of pages, he blows up the chemical plant, he jumps down and like skydives inside the plane to make an escape. And then we have a little cut to Monte Carlo where he's driving around with Moneypenny in an Aston Martin, and then he kind of gets into a bit of a street race with Xenia on a top and a red Ferrari. And it's not like rushed through, like it's a whole car chase segment, which is actually pretty well done in the comic.
Yeah, they give it 4 pages, which is actually surprising because it's supposed to be 1/3 of the movie.
Yeah, so like they take a quick little moment from the movie, which is just supposed to explain that like James is a bit of a reckless character. The comic, the comic actually gives it some breathing room, and it shows off some great visuals.
So we get into the part where the second area where he meets Xenia at the poker table, which this book is, I want to say, filled with dialogue and balloons and...
Yeah, especially the casino scene you're talking about. It's pretty dialogue heavy, but I think the comic does a good job of like giving them little punchy exchanges at one another, and like the trademark like James Bond dry wit pans out well. So we've had an action beat, a car chase, and then like that James Bond suaveness in a casino, and everything's great. And we're at the start of the movie still. Like, we still don't even know what the story of the movie is. It's established the characters. It's established that he's a spy. He's reckless, but he's also like very suave and smart. And then things just like kick into high gear because they're like, oh, we're running out of pages. And this is supposed to be a 3, like Topps is only going to pay for it to be 3 issues. Little did they know, Topps was really only paying for it to be 1 issue.
Yeah, we see Xenia, I can't remember who, this is like a captain or, oh no, this is a pilot, right? She seduces the pilot at the casino and then goes back to, I think it was on a boat,
Yeah, when she leaves the casino, she ends up hooking up with like an admiral or something. And they go to like a private yacht docked in Monaco, to which they have sex. I guess this would be...
I think they're having sex at this point. Yeah, they definitely are. And then she just squeezes the life out of him.
Yeah, she squeezes him just to the point where he can't breathe, which almost makes you wonder if Glenn Danzig...
if he's like, I want my comics to look like that.
I want my comics to have sexual violence.
So yeah, snap to the next day where James Bond is just in standard street clothes going to see... It's the launch of their brand new helicopter with Xenia and some other guy...
Yeah, but
her henchman Steele.
Yeah, so when it cuts from Xenia's murder scene to the side of a boat, the boat that they're in, James Bond is already inside the boat. It doesn't explain how he got there. He's just there. And Xenia is leaving with somebody else, and it doesn't explain how or why they're leaving. It just, in one panel, it shows, we're not showing any establishing shot for either of these characters for where they're coming from, where they're going, or what their motivation is. And then the little action beat on the panel is James Bond punches a guard. Walks away, and then we cut to him discovering the dead body, and Xenia was on her way to hijack the launch of some sort of like attack helicopter. Yeah,
you just get a novel worth of text as well, exposition and just talking. Yeah, but she steals it. James Bond gets captured by the guys because they think that he's involved. He jumps the railing. That's where you get my favorite scene with Boris the Invincible. Yeah. Where he's working at the satellite station in, where is it? Is it Siberia? No, it's Russia, right?
Yeah, it's like northern Russia. Yeah, you're right. It's basically in like some sort of like Arctic wasteland where they're at some sort of like satellite missile detection base or something.
Boris has a naked picture of Natalia on his computer screen, which is much more revealing than what the actual movie was.
Yeah.
Which is shocking because the sex scene is less than what the movie was in the comic. But this is, and they go ahead and show it twice. And then it turns into a sexy little Boris.
Yeah. So this is kicking up into high gear. There are images somewhere in this comic on these pages. You'll have to take the artist's word for them because they are fucking buried under walls of text. Absolute walls. And I don't know if I have an answer for should the entire... Like, if you're going to one-shot a comic like this, is this what you do? Like, do you just go, all right, this is what everything we're cutting out and we're just going to get to, like, you know, the bare bones of it? Or... are you better to like do a comic like this where you take your time and actually show what's great about the movie and try to sell it to someone, but then Topps cancels it. So instead of getting a really shitty rush through GoldenEye comic, you could actually go out and find a GoldenEye comic that has 3 really good action beats done in a very interesting comic form.
I don't think that there's another GoldenEye comic. I did try and look to see if somebody adapted it better than what Topps tried to.
Yeah.
Like you said, the cover for the comic book is amazing. The art is mainly hip. There are some misses, but just the dialogue walls just... It reminds me of reading X-Men Age of Apocalypse, where it's just like exposition, like half a page, just text. My final thoughts for this is I wouldn't even bother reading it because there's not enough there, and you can have a better time watching the movie and you can have a better time playing the game.
Yeah, this doesn't really add... I know now with comics and movie tie-ins, they've kind of given up on the movie tie-in, and now when you see like, oh, there's a Judge Dredd comic based off like the last Judge Dredd movie, or there's a Big Trouble in Little China comic. A lot of those comics now are based in the movie universe, where they might be prequel or sequel stories that aren't canon. It's just taking the concept of the movie that worked and then giving it to someone who's adapting a story to fit the comic medium, which is hard to say which you like more. Like, this comic could have easily have been Topps is going to do a 1-issue James Bond comic based on the James Bond GoldenEye universe. And it could have been complete shit, or it could have been actually pretty interesting. But I guess I will give them credit that someone actively made an attempt to turn GoldenEye into a comic book. And for the first half of it, it works well. And then it kind of falls apart. And then when you understand that Topps was like, haha, joke's on you. Like, it's right on the cover. It says issue 1 of 3, you know, limited printing first edition. And I think it even says collector's edition, which is
all of them say collector's edition.
Just the badge of shame. It's just like the scarlet letter for comics.
I'm sure
it's gonna be shit.
I'm sure this comic was in a poly bag when you bought it as well. Where do you put it on that pedestal of greatness for your top 10?
The absolute bottom. Just because it has moments of greatness, it just fails. It has some interesting bits to it, but like the final execution and the fact that it never even reached completion, I think is frustrating. So even if you're a James Bond fanatic or you love GoldenEye and the Pierce Brosnan movies, like, it doesn't look like Pierce Brosnan. It only does a competent job for the first half, and then it gets too frustrating to follow. What about you, Adam?
I agree with you. This would go on the very bottom, which I believe is number 6. So of our current top 10, it's going to be the last one. And I can't imagine it ever staying in that top 10 as we read more books. It's going to get pushed out pretty fast.
I could see a couple issues of erotica going underneath it. Maybe some 90s X trash you're going to force me to read eventually.
Yeah, I definitely am.
Yeah.
There's books.
And I think I have some... You know what? I might dig through my long boxes and find that special book I bought thinking... Oh, I loved this, like the adaptation. Oh, I know exactly. It'll be my nuclear deterrent will be to stop you from making me read trash comics. Is I will dig out one of my issues of Spawn Godslayer.
I have one issue at home as well. I never read it.
Yeah. So for the next episode of the podcast, I'm choosing a book for Adam to read. I really enjoy this book. Adam's never read it, and along with being a very interesting book and fun, it also is the creator asking the question of why are comics geared now to such an old audience, and why and we've even kind of discussed this ourselves with the comics we've been reading. Why does every comic now need to touch on like super mature themes? What happened to kids' comics?
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this 1/3 podcast for the 1/3 comic that was Topps Comics, the movie adaptation of James Bond 007 GoldenEye, 1 of 3 collector's edition.
So for special nods to Topps Comics, you've been listening to Topps Comics Presents It's a Kind of Garbage podcast, movie edition, adaptation, comic edition of GoldenEye, James Bond 007, first edition, collector's item podcast. Just as many grab you words as you can put in front of something to try to convince someone that they'd be stupid not to buy it.
As always, you can find us online through our social media accounts on Twitter and Instagram, both at A Kind of Garbage. You can also email us at akindofgarbage@gmail.com with any questions or comments you may have. Be sure to check us out at akindofgarbage.com, where you can find links to our Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube pages, as well as our Patreon page at patreon.com/akindofgarbage, where you can get access to our private Discord channel and Patreon exclusive podcasts. Thank you again for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time.